Okay, this is the second part of Prologue to the Canterbury Tales, um, the friar. And there was also a friar named Hubert who lived happily and excessively. He was a beggar, but a sweet talking one. Of all the friars in the world, he was the most playful. He was the best beggar in town and was so smooth that he could even get the poorest little old ladies to give him money. This money is for the church. As a result, he made more money than he actually needed, which meant that he could play like a puppy all day long. He was good at resolving legal disputes too, and did so wearing thick, well-shaped robes that were so splendid. He looked like the people He looked like the people, you can say, he looked like the Pope instead of poor friar. He even pretended to have a lisp to make himself sound more dignified. He had married many young ladies, much to his own dismay. Oh, he was one of the church's finest, all right. All the guys in town and the woman too thought he was just great because, as he himself put it, there was no one who could hear confessions better than he could. All you had to do was slip him some change, and he'd swear up and down that you were the most patient person um, penitent, that you were the most penitent person that ever lived, no matter what you'd done or how sorry you really were. And since bribes are easier than actual remorse, so this guy, I had a lot of nice stuff, including a fair amount of jewelry in his rooms that he used to woo the ladies. He could also play the fiddle and sing the sweetest songs with a twinkle in his eye. He knew all the bars in town and every bartender and barmaid too. He knew them much better, in fact, than he knew any of the lepers or beggar women or other poor people whom he was supposed to be helping. It wouldn't have been fitting for him, the powerful man that he was, and to be seen with such people. Besides, there's no money to be made hanging out with the likes of them. Instead, he'd spend all his time with the wealthy, flattering them so that they would give him money. Moving to page 7, after the flyer, in this flyer, we can see another character. Come, 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 come. Yes, here we are. So there was also a merchant who had a forked beard and wore clothes that looked like jesters. This businessman wore a beaver that from Holland and had expensive looking boots. He spoke very seriously, making sure that everyone knew how wealthy and successful he was. He was particularly obsessed with making sure that the Navy maintained order in the North Sea between England and Holland. So this business was actually worried that the ships were looted and they had to suffer a loss. So he needed that the police and armies, they should protect the seas, so the ships should not be robbed. Okay, now I'll continue. And so between England and Holland, he played the markets uh, well and sold a lot of Dutch money in currency exchanges. This guy was very smart, all right. He carried himself so well that no one suspected he was really heavily in debt. Whatever he was actually a good guy, and it's too bad if never learned his name. Then there was a clerk from Oxford who studied philosophy. His horse was a lean as a rake, and so was he for the matter. He looked hollow and serious. He wore a threadbare cloak because he didn't make any money. He didn't have a job because he didn't want one. He'd rather own 20 philosophy books than have nicer clothes or nice things. He used all the money his friends gave him to buy books, and he prayed for the souls of his friends by helping him to pursue his passion. Not surprisingly, he spent most of his time reading. He was polite, but he spoke only when it was necessary, and important to do so. His speeches were short and quick, but very insightful and open about morality. He was both eager to learn and eager to teach. Now we go to the next page. Then we see, and there was a sergeant of law. Actually, in the past, there was doctor and sergeant. Doctors and advocates, they were combined in one. So there was a sergeant of law, too, who was both wise and slightly suspicious of everything. He spent a lot of his time counseling with his clients outside the St. Paul's Cathedral in London. He was very wise and well respected and chose his words carefully when he spoke. He had served as the judge in a criminal court before, and his vast knowledge and wisdom had made him famous. He'd, he had earned a lot of money as a judge and had become a great and powerful landowner. He had memorized all of the laws, court cases, and decisions in England over the last 300 years and could therefore write the most perfect legal document. He was an incredibly busy person, but always made himself look busier than he really was. He traveled in a simple, not multicolored coat that was tied together with a silk belt and some small pins. And that's all I really have to say about his clothing. The judge traveled, and the judge traveled with a Franklin. This judge means this, you see, a man of law, sergeant of law. Franklin. He had a so I said the doctor and lawyers, so they were combined in one. It's not one. Another idea came to my mind to the doctor. It's not the surgeon. It's the sergeant. You can say. So he had a fleshy red face and a snow white beard. He loved to eat a piece of bread soaked in wine for breakfast every morning. He was an Epicurean and believed that the pleasures of the world bring true happiness. He owned a large house and frequently entertained the guests who came From miles around, he always had the best bread and beer, and there was no much meat and fish that it must have rained wine and hailed food at his house. He also liked to mix up his diet according to the seasons. His chicken coops were actually filled with partridges and his stews filled with fish. I pity the chef who served him bland, bland food. His dining room table was always loaded with food, and no matter what time of day it was, he wore a dagger or dagger. It must be dagger, and a white purse. He was a powerful member of parliament and a former sheriff. Nowhere was there a more worthy landowner. There was, there was also a haberdasher, a hat maker, a carpenter, a weaver, a clothing dyer, and a tapestry maker. These men all belonged to the same working men's union called a guild. Because they belonged to the same guild, and they all wore the same clothing too, which seemed to have been made just recently. They wore expensive accessories, including purses, belts, and even fancy knives with handles made of pure silver. Each of them seemed like he could have been a powerful leader of their guild or even a town council. They were certainly all wise enough and wealthy enough to do so. Their wives would no doubt have pushed them to take such positions of power because they too would benefit from being married to men of such prestige. The guildsmen brought a cook with them to make them tasty dishes on their journey, spicy chickens and tarts and whatnot. And the cook certainly knew a good beer when he saw one and could roast, broil, fry, and stew with the best of them. His chicken stew was particularly good. Too bad he had a nasty sore on his leg. There was also a shipman who came from the west, maybe as far away as the city of Dartmouth. He wore a cheap shirt that came down to his knees, and he rode an old, shabby horse. He also wore a dagger tied into a strap that hung across his chest. He had just recently brought over a wine merchant from Bahria on his ship, the Magdalene, and had gotten tan and more than a little drunk during the voyage. He was a good guy, but didn't let his conscience bother him. When he won battles at sea, he would release his captives. He was an excellent navigator too and knew how to read the stars better than any other man. He could sail in any waters and knew all the safe spots from Tunisia and Spain to Sweden. He was hardy and had weathered many storms. He was both he was both wise and practical in everything he did. So this is end of this part two of prologue to the Canterbury Tale. I shall continue it until the next video, video three, and keep watching that. Thank you for watching. And in the end, the formal request: if you have not yet, please subscribe to the channel and press the like and bell button to get the fresh from us. Thank you for watching. Have a nice time and goodbye.